So this guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is not a U.S. citizen. He is from El Salvador. He was brought here when he was 16 by his parents. He got arrested around, let's see, it was 2019. And he was like 19 or 20 at that time. He was arrested outside of a Home Depot in Hyattsville, Maryland, by Prince George County police officers on suspicion of being a gang member. Okay, so that nobody was bothering him. He was here, brought over. They call them so-called dreamers when it's their parents who bring them. They don't come willingly, but no question, he entered illegally. But then he was suspected of being a gang member, and that found him in the crosshairs of law enforcement, and they handed him over to ICE. They recognized that he was not here illegally. The following day, he was served with a notice of to appear, and that commenced removal proceedings against him pursuant to 8 U.S.C. Section 1229A. He was charged as removable. The government was recognizing he was here unlawfully, and on top of that, he appeared to have behaved unlawfully, though they did not need the latter in order to deport him. Just the fact that you're here illegally subjects you to being deported. That's just the way it is. Then he went through not one, but 2 court proceedings. The first was a bond hearing on April 29th, 2019 with immigration judge Elizabeth Kessler, who ruled the evidence showed he was a verified member of MS-13. He was afforded a hearing at which he presented evidence, and so did the other side. The court, quote, first reasoned that the respondent failed to meet his burden of demonstrating that his release from custody would not pose a danger to others, as the evidence shows he's a verified member of MS-13. On December 19th, 2019, so, 8 months later or so, the Board of Immigration Appeals affirmed that finding that he was a member of MS-13. Quote, notwithstanding the respondent's challenges to the reliability of the Prince George's County Police Department gang field interview sheet, the immigration judge appropriately considered allegations of gang affiliation against the respondent in determining that he has not demonstrated that he's not a danger to property or persons here. Then, as he realized he was about to be actually kicked out of the country, he had already been deemed not qualified for bond, he applied for asylum, even though it was much too late. You have to apply for asylum within a year of getting here. And then, not coincidentally, also asked for something called withholding from removal from El Salvador in particular, allegedly due to threats from gangs. It was his safety move. Like, if you won't give me asylum, then please at least say they can't send me back to El Salvador, because there are mean gangs there who want to hurt me and my family. And on October 10th, 2019, he was granted not asylum, but withholding of removal to El Salvador after the immigration judge agreed he had established it was more likely than not that he would be persecuted by gangs in El Salvador. ICE did not appeal that grant of relief, and plaintiff Abrego Garcia was then promptly released from custody. ICE arrested him in Baltimore this past March under the Trump deportation push. So that's his history. He is under an order of removal. And at that moment, where the judge found he didn't qualify for bond and that he was removable, just not to El Salvador, he could have been deported to any country in the world. The only arguably wrong thing that's happened here is that when Trump deported him, he sent him to the man's home country of El Salvador. But even that has 2 potential hooks out of it for the Trump administration. One, if the circumstance that led to the danger for you in that country you're objecting to go into has been removed, then you can be sent back. And that gang that was allegedly persecuting him is no more in El Salvador. So that's one. 2, Stephen Miller argued this yesterday, that President Trump has declared MS-13 a terrorist organization and ordered all these suspected terrorists to be removed, period, which is a different kind of removal and may supersede the withholding of removal order. That's something they'd have to argue in court, and it would have to play out, and it hasn't yet. But I did take note of Stephen Miller's emphasis on he's a terrorist, and President Bukele of El Salvador mentioned that word too. And it seems to me that they're trying to tee up yet another legal argument as to why even the order not to remove him to El Salvador would not be in control over this particular guy because of Trump's immigration ruling. Okay, so that's where we are now. But that leads me to the media today, which has decided he is not an illegal. He is a Maryland man. That is basically what the media wants us to believe, that he's this really sweet guy who is just a dad in Maryland, and the mean Trump administration is trying to kick him out, and we don't understand why they're doing that. It feels very wrong to the media. Here's a little bit of a stop montage of some of that, talking about him. Just a Maryland dad, guys. That's all.
Involving the Maryland father.
The Maryland father's case is in court.
And happening now, a hearing for a Maryland man.
Details about a Maryland man.
Tonight, the Maryland man.
The Maryland man.
Maryland father with protected legal status.
The Maryland father with protected status.
A Maryland father with protected legal status.
A Maryland father with protected legal status.
I think that was Newsbusters who put that together. Very well done. It really tells the story. Not one fact that I've just espoused in laying out this story for you and for our audience for the fourth time was repeated in these reports because they're not helpful to the narrative. Maryland father, Steve, is much more appealing.
Megyn, I have to tell you, this entire story, there are two kind of meta things about this that stands out to me. Number one, I mean, the long train of due process that this Maryland father has received. It's way more due process than the state of Colorado is apparently willing to grant parents who don't want their kids taken to the island of Dr. Moreau against their own will, and then they'll be put in jail if they don't consent. I mean, apparently this goes to the lie, by the way, we're a nation of immigrants. When my ancestors came here from Italy and Sicily at the turn of the last century, they didn't view themselves as immigrants. They wanted to become citizens. We're a nation of citizens, all right? And so if any point in time, the people that are lawfully here have less rights than the people who are not, we've lost the plot. And then speaking of which, you know, I think this entire story, this is the other thing that kind of stands out to me about the meta aspects of this. You know, I long for the days when the president was a Russian asset that was, that was compromised because of a water sports tape, and he was engaged in quid pro quo with Ukraine, and all the other great scandals. The other side, the left, is now down to how dare you deport this MS-13 gang member. And so I'm reminded of the great prophet Sun Tzu and his Art of War. When your opponent is making a fool out of themselves, let them.
Yeah, it's so well said. You know, Delano, this Maryland man thing, and Newsbusters did a good job of showing how it's the exact same language being used on multiple networks, is such a lie. It's an obvious lie. They are obfuscating this. And even when the ones who reference that there was a finding, he's part of MS-13 that was upheld on appeal, the next thing they do is attack the finding. Well, it wasn't much evidence. Well, you weren't there. There was no... It was appealed and it was upheld on appeal. They're the ones who are lecturing us about you have to respect the courts or we're going to have a constitution. Well, the courts handled this at the time with the Prince George's County gang unit. And by the way, Prince George's County is not some far right county. It's about as leftist as they come. And now they want we're allowed to second guess that court, but no other court that says he was removable or that the Trump administration made an error here.
Yeah, I actually live in Prince George's County, not too far from Hyattsville. So yeah, I'm very familiar sort of with the political climate there. This has been, I think, for people who are not following the news closely, a very confusing case because there are different perspectives going back and forth, right? Aside from the propaganda in terms of him being a Maryland man, right? Sort of obfuscating his legal status. It's okay. Is he a gang member? Is he not a gang member? Has he had his due process or has he not? Is the Supreme Court saying, is there a distinction between facilitating his return and effectuating his return? What I look at are sort of big picture issues, and I think there are ones that apply to each side. One, on the right, I do think there's an issue of due process, and taking it out of this case, right? We're a nation of laws. People have rights. Citizens, to Steve's point, have the highest class of rights, and non-citizen residents I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to, what that set of rights looks like. But I think there are some people who say, look, if he can be taken off the street and sent back to El Salvador, what happens if that happens to me and my mom or my dad is on a green card? I understand those concerns. But on the other side, for people who believe that for too long, the American government, both federal and local, has prioritized the rights of criminals over the rights of law-abiding citizens, this is a moment where we have to say, you know what? We don't have the stomach to do what really needs to be done to make America safe again. And we're going to have to develop it over time. Because if we freak out over every single incident that the media can spin in a particular way, we're never going to get anywhere. And it's ironic because, President Trump was hosting, the president of El Salvador, who basically said to the gangs, your time is up. I'm rounding up everybody with, extensive head and neck and arm tattoos, and I'm carting you off to jail. And for someone like me, who has openly questioned whether, we could be a little bit more innovative in some of our criminal justice policies to minimize the sort of third-party effects to innocent citizens, I look at that and say, wow, this guy's doing something that, in some respects, I can get behind. But I also know that that's not the way we do things in America. So there's sort of a tension there. And I think if you ask the average American citizen, hey, if you could snap your finger today and lock up every single gang member, Bloods, Crips, neo-Nazis, Italian mafia, Russian mafia, I think many people will say yes, because we want our streets to be safe again. So at a certain point, we're going to have to develop the stomach for this, and we can't allow the media to take every individual incident and get us off track.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. So right now, this man is in an El Salvadoran prison, this one that we're sending these illegals to. And the media back home is completely running cover for him. Just a couple more examples of the ones I gave you. Politico's headline, El Salvador won't return wrongly deported Maryland man. New York Times, El Salvador's leader says he won't return wrongly deported Maryland man. Bloomberg, Bukele says deported Maryland man won't be returned to the United States. I mean, you wouldn't even know that he was an El Salvadorian citizen for many of these. And here is the CBC, our friends up north. El Salvador president says he won't return U.S. man who was deported by mistake. As if Trump decided Steve Deace needs to go because he mistook you for an illegal and sent you home and then said, there's nothing I can do about this. And here's just one more. Here's the New York Times' The Daily interviewing their Supreme Court correspondent, Adam Liptak, about whether this guy has had any due process. And now I just laid it out for you. What happened to him in 2019, the immigration judge, I read you excerpts from her decision. Then it went up in appeal. I read you excerpts from that court's decision. Then he acclaimed asylum or withholder from removal. And they said, you don't qualify for asylum. And they gave him withholding from removal from one country only. But he was absolutely deportable at that moment to any other country. And listen to the way the Times styles what happened to him.
He wasn't afforded the merest amount of due process. And if he had been afforded that, he could have made 2 points. One, that he's exempt from being deported to El Salvador. And two, that if there are other things to be said about his life, he could dispute that, put in evidence, call witnesses.
He had the chance.
He was afforded neither of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was.
And in any event, even if everything was true, even if he's a member of this gang, even if that's criminal conduct, even if it's criminal conduct in the United States, that still doesn't give the government the right to deport him. Maybe it gives them the right to prosecute him in the United States. Maybe it gives them the right to send him somewhere other than El Salvador. But the one thing we know is that it's unlawful to send him to El Salvador.
We have every right to deport every illegal in this country, every single one who hasn't been granted asylum. that we do not have to prove that they've committed an extra crime on top of their illegal entry. You've heard about tariffs recently, plus inflation, supply chain disruptions. It's a lot, but there is a silver lining that most people missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from the tariff talk. The administration preserved the ability to diversify into precious metals. If you are concerned about your savings, consider a free consultation with a Birch Gold precious metals specialist. The first step is to text MK to 989898 and receive your free no-obligation info kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful customers, consider texting MK to 989898. Again, text MK to 989898 to claim your free info kit right now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.